All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our public hearing, I believe for January 31st at 7 o'clock. Before I get into the script, this is a quasi-judicial setting at a public hearing, and so I'm going to have a bit of a script to read at the front end of it, and I'll go over it in the best detail I can. I know Councillors Ma and Pope, this is your first public hearing since being elected, so I'm going to try and go over the rules a little in more detail also as we close off the hearing as well. But I want to welcome everybody here tonight. So this meeting is being held in a hybrid fashion. That means that members of the public, members of staff, and members of the council can all participate either in person here or virtually through the system. So in that regard, all members of the council are present and participating in the public hearing, even though Councillors Murray, Forbes, and Hanson are joining us virtually today. They will be observing the entire meeting. So at this point, I'm going to head into the script here. This meeting is being called to deal with the OCP and zoning bylaw amendments and phase development agreement for 1310 Monashee Drive. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act and is being held in a hybrid meeting format, meaning there is a combination of in-person electronic participation by some or all members of the council, staff, and the public. The chair has established the following rules for this hearing. We will go through the established speakers list. At the end of the speakers list, the chair may call for any other speakers not on the speakers list. You will have 5 minutes to address council for a first time. Begin your remarks to council by stating your name. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken once, speakers will then be allowed one additional 5-minute opportunity. Any additional presentations will only be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Please do not repeat information from your previous presentations and ensure your comments remain focused on the bylaws under consideration this evening. If you have provided a written submission, there's no need to read it, as it will have been already seen by the council. You may summarize or briefly reiterate the highlights of your submission, but ensure your comments pertain to the bylaw under consideration at this hearing. All members of the audience are asked to be respectful of one another's diverse opinions as diverse opinions are expressed. Council wishes to hear everyone's views in an open and impartial forum. Some important notes about public hearings. Council is here to listen to the public, not to debate the merits of the bylaw. Council may ask clarifying questions. The clerk has a binder containing documents and submissions related to the bylaws which council has received and which you are welcome to review. This is available at the on the table next to the door or online at dnv.org/agenda. Everyone at the hearing will be provided an opportunity to speak. If necessary, we will continue the hearing on a second night. At the conclusion of the public input, council may request further information from staff, which may or may not require an extension of the hearing, or council may close the hearing, after which council should not receive further new information from the public. Finally, please note that this hearing is being held via Zoom and recorded in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And just before I send the matter over to the clerk, so for members of council, as I said in the notes, that council may ask clarifying questions. The nature of that is, I believe a link has been set around to council through your email. And if you have questions, just type them in, send them in. We'll check in with the clerk from time to time and with staff from time to time. And before we close the hearing, we'll do our best to address all of those clarifying questions if possible. And
Councillor Murray does have her hand raised.
Councillor Murray, you have your hand raised, a process question?
I do have a process question. So today, I noticed that the agenda that was circulated to council did not include the complete submission that is in the binder that is available to the public. So our agenda did not include the transportation reports nor the geotechnical studies. It's not attached, although I believe Ms. Lanz did attach it to the Teams folder. Is that correct?
Through your worship, The public information binder was made available online 2 weeks previously. For convenience to council, it was posted a link in the team as to provide that as an easy access point. Council has received all submissions as they've been received from the public input.
But can you clarify the reports in regards to the geotechnical studies and the transportation studies that were not included in the public hearing agenda that we received?
They were not included in the public hearing agenda, as that includes the bylaws and staff report being considered. All of the geotechnical reports were included in the additional information PDF, which was posted, which is the binder that the mayor indicated was beside the door, but also posted online on the district website.
But it was not sent to
Available-
council. It was not sent
It's
to
also
council
available
through.
at dnv.org/agenda.
Yeah, Mayor Little, I think my point is that council may not have known that those documents were posted on the DNV site for our knowledge. It was, obviously pertinent for the public to be able to access those records through DNV, but we were not given that information. I had staff email me the geotech reports this afternoon.
Okay. But it has been publicly available, but noted that it wasn't sent specifically around with the council package. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. At this point, I'm going to turn the matter over to the clerk for introduction of the bylaws.
Thank you. District of North Vancouver Official Community Plan 7900-2011 Amendment Bylaw 8561-2022 Amendment 47. District of North Vancouver Rezoning Bylaw 1416 Bylaw 8562 and Phase Development Agreement Bylaw 86062022 1310 Monashee Drive. Purpose of bylaws. Bylaws 8561 proposes to amend the OCP land use designation of the subject site from parks, open space, and natural areas, POSNA, to commercial residential mixed use level 1, CRMU1. Bylaw 8562 proposes to amend the district zoning bylaw by rezoning the subject site from park, recreation, and open space zone, PRO, to comprehensive development zone 141, CD 141. The CD 141 zone addresses permitted and accessory uses and zoning provisions such as density, amenities, setbacks, site and building coverage, landscaping and stormwater management, and parking and loading requirements. Bylaw 8606 is a phased development agreement with 1310 Monashee Project Nominee Limited, which mandates the completion defined as earning occupancy permit from the district of the proposed development on or before June 30th, 2027. This agreement may be assigned only with the written agreement of the district. The term of the agreement is 10 years. The agreement stipulates that the use, density, siting, height, and coverage provisions of the proposed rezoning bylaw 8562, if adopted, will not be amended or repealed for 10 years except as set out in the agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. And so before we start, the order of events is that we're going to have a brief presentation. I believe Mr. Zhang has about 10 minutes in presentation, and the applicant has a period of up to 15 minutes to make their presentation. And then we're going to move on to the public hearing speakers list, at which time everybody will have an opportunity to make initial 5-minute presentations at that point. At this point, I only have 3 speakers who have signed up to speak to the matter, but that's not going to be an exhaustive list. At the end of the 3 speakers, I'll return back to the room to see if anybody else would like to speak either virtually or here in person. But at this point, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Kevin Zhang from district staff for your initial presentation. Welcome.
Your Worship. Good evening, members of council and members of the public. My name is Kevin Zhang, Senior Development Planner with the district. The public hearing tonight is for the 3 bylaws on screen, all associated with the redevelopment proposal at 1310 Monashee Drive. My presentation will highlight some key aspects of the proposal and the district process to date. The applicant team here is also tonight and will present more on the details of the project itself. Darwin Properties has applied on behalf of the owners of 1310 Monashee Drive to redevelop the site to create a mixed-use development consisting of 6-story buildings seen here on screen. Within the development are a total of 315 rental units targeted at CAPU students, faculty, and staff, and approximately 860 8,600 square feet of commercial space on the ground level. The total density of the project is 1.75 FSR. And a quick reminder for the remainder of the presentation, for the sake of brevity, I will refer to Capilano University as CapU, and I will shorten Capilano University students, staff, and faculty as CapU individuals. Moving on, I'll provide some site context on the next couple of slides. So 1310 Monashi Drive, highlighted by the yellow star, is located in the Livermore North neighborhood between Lynn Creek and the Seymour River. Immediately adjacent to the Capilano University campus, highlighted by the orange star. Zooming in, the subject property is again highlighted in yellow, directly adjacent to the CapU campus. At this scale, we can highlight some of the key transportation services and amenities that may serve future residents of this proposal. In terms of amenities, there are numerous parks and trails in all directions, as can be seen from this satellite photo. But I'll also highlight a couple of facilities such as Inter-River Fields and Ron Andrews. In terms of transportation, the site is close to access points for both Highway 1 and the Second Narrows Bridge, and has transit connections to Phibbs Exchange. Lastly, there are 3 major commercial hubs just south of the site, including Park and Tilford, Lynn Creek Town Center, and Maplewood Village Center. And finally, at the site level, we can see that the 2.9 acre site, highlighted in yellow again, is situated on the east side of Monashi Drive, the road in orange. Currently located on site is Northwest Kennels, a dog boarding facility. The Capilano University is located south and west of the site. Of note, immediate neighbors include the campus bus loop, a new 362-bed student building that's recently received their development permit, and a future childcare. Implementation of the proposal requires 4 bylaws. The first is an OCP amendment bylaw, changing the designation from Parks, Open Space, and Natural Areas, POSNA, to Commercial Residential Mixed Use Level 1. Staff are supportive of this amendment because the property is not identified by district parks as a location for a future potential park. It's also not identified as an area for conservation and recreation in Metro Vancouver's regional land use plan. And it's aligned with the OCP goals of encouraging student housing near the CapU campus and encouraging a broad range of market and non-market rental units. The second is a zoning amendment from Parks, Recreation, and Open Space to a custom comprehensive development zone. And this zone is tailored to the proposal and will include key requirements such as density, height, setbacks, and parking. The third is a housing agreement bylaw, which will secure rental housing stipulations, and this applies across the entire project, both for market and non-market rental housing units. And lastly, a phased development agreement, which will secure construction timelines requiring timely completion of the project by June 2027. Now, I won't go into too much detail about the physical design of the proposal because the architect is also here and will speak to it in their presentation. But I will familiarize everyone with the basic structure of this development. As mentioned previously, this is a mixed-use development proposal with 315 residential units, which are all rental. The general layout is 2 buildings surrounded by a central courtyard. The northern building contains, highlighted in blue here, contains 158 rental units, and the southern building contains 157 rental units. Both buildings include commercial units on the ground floor fronting onto Monashi Drive, highlighted in red. The intent is to lease these spaces to businesses that would support the residents in the campus precinct, such as a small grocery, restaurant, and other services. The application includes street frontage improvements along Monashi Drive, such as street trees, furniture, and better pedestrian connections to the rest of the campus. The offsite works is currently estimated at approximately $725,000, and the development cost charges are estimated at $3.2 million. As background, Council has seen this project on 3 previous occasions. In January 2020, a preliminary application was presented to Council for discussion at Council workshop. In general, Council was supportive of the proposal going to further consideration, but stressed that the entire proposal needed to have stronger ties to the university. On May 30th, 2022, a detailed rezoning application was first presented to Council. At this meeting, Council concurred with staff recommendation that the application be referred back to staff to work on a number of items, with the key ask being increasing the total number of rental units dedicated to CAPU individuals. Staff worked with the applicant over the coming months and came back to Council with a revised proposal on December 5th, the third item on the screen here. The revised proposal significantly increased the number of rental units guaranteed for CAPU individuals, which resulted in an amenity package that was in line with the district's CAC policy. This change is demonstrated in the comparison charts below, which break down the proposal into 3 tenure types, the green, the red, and the blue, and they represent non-market rental units, CAPU guaranteed rental units, and market rental units. So as you can see, I'll just draw your attention to the 2 bars on the right. The difference between the 2 proposals is that the CAPU guaranteed units increased from 18 to 126, resulting in a reduction of market rental units from 265 to 157. And in both cases, the non-market rental units remain the same at 32. Council gave these bylaws first reading in December, which brings us to the public hearing tonight. Council sought clarity on the housing agreement, specifically regarding the different tenure types and the features associated with each tenure type. So staff have prepared the following table, which I'll go through next. In essence, as I mentioned previously, there are 315 units total in this proposal, and they're split into 3 categories: 32 non-market rental units, 126 CAPU guaranteed units, and 157 market rental units. The first feature in the housing agreement is CAPU priority access. And this applies to all the units in the proposal. And what this means is that the owner must first offer on a priority basis to CAPU individuals for a period of 14 days. The list of interested eligible tenants is maintained by CAPU. The second feature is called CAPU guarantee. And this means that a unit can only be rented to CAPU individuals and is not available to the general public. This limitation is intended to reserve the rental units to those who most likely would benefit from its location. And it applies to the first 2 categories of rental units, which combine for approximately 50% of the entire development. The last feature is non-market rents, and the applicant is proposing 32 non-market rental units, approximately 10% of the proposal, with rents that are at or below the DMV median rent. And this will be secured in the housing agreement, along with the requirement for these units to be operated by a non-profit housing provider. As the name suggests, these non-market units only apply to the 32 non-market rental units. So in summary, the 32 non-market units must be offered to CAPU individuals, can only be rented to CAPU individuals and have reduced rents. The CAPU guaranteed units are similar, but does not have reduced rents. And lastly, the market rental units are open to both CAPU and non-CAPU individuals, but must be offered to CAPU individuals first for a period of 14 days. And on this slide, I'll provide a brief overview of the vehicle and parking provided in this proposal. Vehicle and bicycle parking both align with the district's alternative vehicle parking rates policy as approved. The proposal includes 210 vehicle parking stalls and 578 bicycle parking stalls, all provided in one level of underground parking. One concern noted, particularly by residents in the Seymour Boulevard area, is slope stability. And from this contour map, we can see that there are two stepped slopes leading up to the subject site, highlighted in yellow. And the two slopes are separated by a public trail, highlighted in green. Geo-Pacific consultants have published a slope stability report and a geotechnical investigation report, which indicate that based on their analysis, the land may be safely used for the use intended, given a setback of 33.5 meters or 110 feet as highlighted in red from the east property line. And, and this is to ensure suitable separation from the sloped areas. The proposal does reflect this east setback as recommended by the consultant. The applicant's geotechnical engineer is also present for any specific questions. And lastly, we'll just note that at first reading, a member of council did raise two questions and wanted to see if the district is able to require that the buildings be pet friendly and also stipulate a locals first restrictions. So after research, it was determined that municipalities currently do not have the legal tools for that requirement. However, the applicant is able to speak further on both of those points. Yeah, so staff did look into that, the request for a pet-friendly building and also the locals first restriction. And it was determined that currently local municipalities do not have the legal tools to make those two requirements. However, the applicant team here is able to speak further on those 2 points.
The applicant is able to speak to those two matters.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So there is a little bit of an echo. I hear it too, Councillor Pope. There's a bit of an echo, but yeah. So
No worries. Yeah, sorry. It's
not you.
it's clear if I just speak without speaking at the mic, but then I don't think the councillors at home are able to hear me if I don't provide this echo. In summary, staff would like to mention that this proposal does provide much needed rental housing adjacent to the university campus and is aligned with the district's official community plan, the official community plan action plan, the rental housing affordable strategy, and the council directions. That concludes my presentation. I'll pass that back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. At this point, I will call on the applicant to bring up their group for presentation. Welcome. You have 15 minutes to present to the council for the hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for hosting us here this evening. I would like to acknowledge that the land we sit on and that we discuss is the unceded territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Thank you to the district staff and also the Capilano staff who have worked diligently in the background in collaboration with us to move this process forward. My name is Jessica O'Sullivan. I am a development manager at Darwin Properties. With me here as well is Jason Turcott, president, and Oliver Webb, CEO of Darwin Properties, to answer any questions you may have. Also joining me up at the front is Craig Taylor, our architect with TKAD, and I will hand it over to him for the first half of the presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Mayor and Council, members of the public. We'll be giving you a brief overview of the project site and the context, as well as the design of the buildings and the surrounding public spaces. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so then we'll pass things back to Darwin, who will discuss the user experience, the housing agreement, and the intended benefits of this development. Located on the northeast edge of Capilano University campus, the project is ideally positioned across the street from the Capilano University bus loop, the faculty building, the Boza Center for Film and TV, student union offices, and the Willow and Dogwood academic buildings. This location is a natural hub and point of entry to CapU, with connections to transit, bike routes, and pedestrian paths throughout the campus. Nearly all of the campus is accessible within a 5-minute walk of the project site. And providing housing with this proximity to campus will enable more students to experience the on-campus lifestyle and allow staff and faculty to live close to work, contributing to a reduction in commuter traffic. Next slide. This image shows the site in its current condition, and this is our vision. Working in a collaborative nature with input from CapU, the goal of this development is to provide housing that meets the needs of the students while providing a variety of housing options beyond the traditional dorm room. The proposed project includes 2 buildings, each with 6 stories above 1 level of underground parking. The site plan shows the footprints of both buildings, Building A to the north and Building B to the south, along with the proposed uses of each space. The commercial spaces, identified by the number 2 on the site plan, are located along the street frontage of Monastery Drive and are set back to allow circulation and gathering space on public patios with outdoor seating, identified by the number 3 on the site plan. And this contributes to an active public realm and creates an inviting space with which is highly visible from the Capilano University bus loop across the street, identified by the number 1. While the primary entrance to the site for cars and service vehicles is at the driveway to the north of the site, the pedestrian corridor, identified as number 4 on the plan, between buildings A and B, connect those arriving on foot, bicycle, or by transit to the interior of the site and the landscaped central courtyard, identified by the number 7. The residential lobbies of both buildings, number 5 and number 6 on the plan, are accessed from within this central courtyard, and the majority of the residential units are tucked back from the street surrounding this green space. Building A offers a series of amenity spaces, identified by number 10, including lounge and social spaces, a group study area, bike repair shop, and a large ground level bike room, identified by number 8. For secure bike storage and easy access by residents. At the eastern edge of the site is the BC Hydro service right-of-way, identified by number 9, beneath the existing power lines. The access to this is taken into consideration in the massing and orientation of the buildings. Next page. The next couple of diagrams show our design strategy and how we've developed the design over the time. And the first diagram on the left shows how the local context is enhanced through a connection of transit, vehicle, and pedestrian routes to on-site amenities, including the street-facing commercial spaces and an extensive landscape courtyard. And the middle diagram talks about building orientation and how we've been able to capture views. The building orientation, including strategically placed rooftop amenity decks, offer views both inwards towards the extensively planted courtyard, as well as outward to the natural vistas inherent to the site. And the third diagram on this sheet talks about how we've oriented the buildings to mitigate and minimize the views to the hydropower lines and their impact on the development. The next page, we continue with our design strategy, and this talks about form and character of the buildings and how it's articulated in the massing through the use of steps in the facade to create a varied street frontage, the use of canopies, which reduce the building scale and create more intimate pedestrian spaces at the street level, and stepping of the top floor of the building back to visually reduce the building volumes while maintaining adequate density and creating extensive outdoor terraces. The center diagram here is referring to solar orientation, and it shows how the buildings are oriented along an east-west axis to provide better access to daylight and effectively manage solar heat gain. Passive solar measures such as overhangs and sunshades further mitigate seasonal solar effects. And the third diagram talks about stormwater management and how it is carefully managed through on-site integrated landscape design, infiltration, and the addition of storage capacity of a retention tank. And the design strategy and considerations outlined in the previous two slides have informed the building massing, and these 3D views are the resulting forms. Roof decks, setbacks, material changes, and steps in the facade help to define different building volumes and create more interesting and human scale elements and spaces. We are working very closely with our landscape architects, Van der Zam and Associates, and Forma Design to develop the program for the green space. The landscape design incorporates both formal and informal pathways, deck areas for gathering, a dry creek, forest paths, sprawling lawn, and both ornamental and native trees and plantings. The goal is to provide the right level of privacy and noise reduction to residents, while also creating an active outdoor green space that helps connect the site to its natural surroundings. The top right elevation on this sheet shows the buildings from the eastern edge of the site looking through the courtyard towards Monashi Drive. The bottom right elevation shows the street frontage along Monashi Drive with extensive glazed commercial units, canopies over paving, patio seating, and the cyclist and pedestrian corridor between the two buildings. Materials used have been selected for their longevity, durability, and ease of maintenance. Wood is an important element. It creates warmth and helps tie the development to the natural surroundings of Cap View, lush forest and mountain air. This is a view of the development from Monashi Drive looking east, and this one is a view from the west, looking west from within the courtyard itself. Thank you, everyone, and I'll hand it back to Darwin now, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Greg. As you can see, the building has been designed to facilitate the use by Capilano University students, faculty, and staff. There's approximately 11,600 students enrolled who will be able to use this project, over 1,000 staff and faculty, and neither of these groups currently have on-campus housing. Over 300 students currently pay $13.50 for off-campus dormitory housing down along Dollarton Highway. There's on average 200 students waiting for a room in that housing, and 50% of the students use transit to get on campus. The District of North Vancouver OCP encourages the provision of student housing at or near the campus of Capilano University, and you can see that our project is perfectly positioned within the student life dormitory quadrant of the Capilano Campus Master Plan. There are a lot of benefits for to this project: environmental, economic, cultural. I'm going to focus on housing. We are providing 315 purpose-built rentals, which will provide safe, long-term, secure housing. 32 of those are non-market housing units guaranteed to Capilano University. 50% or 158 of the units are guaranteed to Capilano University. There is a priority access and an exclusive leasing period, and both of these provisions are secured in the housing agreement in perpetuity and legal covenant on the land. We will be working with Capilano University to ensure that the students have, and faculty and staff all have easy access to the units. We expect and are holding the standard of a seamless experience from a student's point of view so that they don't understand that there's a difference between the dormitory and this housing. We will be providing a variety of on-campus unit sizes and types to accommodate the various needs of different groups. And as previously pointed out, the building was designed for those needs. Before I go further, I want to define two terms: market rental housing versus non-market rental housing. Rental rates for the market housing are subject to supply and demand pressures. The more demand there is for the less supply, the higher the price, and other macroeconomic conditions. The rates that were provided in the staff report are an estimation at the time of application of the broader market conditions. And there is a direct relationship between the age of a building and affordability. Older buildings tend to be the only truly affordable stock across the region. Non-market housing, on the other hand, is rent controlled. The rent increases are tightly restricted by the BC Residential Tenancy Act and the housing agreement. There is income eligibility targeted at moderate income levels. It will be operated by a third-party nonprofit housing society. And as the market most likely continues to increase in price, these units will become more and more affordable in the long term. So let's talk about affordability. This is a project that is providing something that is not currently available on campus. There are a number of mechanisms that I believe will help with the affordability of the project. The 32 non-market housing units, which are guaranteed to Capilano University. There will be a variety of unit sizes, which will allow for choice. Students can save money with more roommates in larger units, or they can opt for private bedrooms or private studios. They will have the increased lifestyle affordability with easy access to buses and car shares, removing the need to own the expense of a car. The proximity to school or work will save on commute time, and the flexibility of having a kitchen in their unit will allow students to cook at home and control their grocery prices. And some units will house renters with greater financial means, but this is a benefit. When you move the folks who can afford a more expensive rent into the newer builds, it frees up space in the more affordable rentals in the nearby neighborhood while increasing the total amount of housing. And I want to emphasize as well, I kind of mentioned it, this is truly building affordable rentals for the next generation. Even if it is not immediately capital A, affordable to everybody who wants to rent here, it will be the more affordable stock in 10, 20, and 30 years. As I mentioned, it is a supply and demand issue, and we haven't built enough housing. The faculty and staff housing needs have indicated that they, through survey, that they would prefer to live near campus. And this slide really illustrates the difference in amenities that the suites within the new project will provide, including the kitchen and the larger unit, even within a studio suite. I think personally that the most affordable option for students are in the 2 and 3 bedroom units. This is a comparison of the Capilano University shared dorms. Currently, up at the top, they have to pay $1,350, and that includes over $600 to the meal plan. By sharing with roommates within the 2 or 3 bedroom unit, they can save on the groceries. Their room will only be approximately $678 or $560. And if they manage to get into the non-market housing, we're looking at as low as $350. And that's my presentation. Thank you, and I am available for questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we're going to head to the public speaking list. Again, the initial list was prepared before the start of the meeting, but as we go through, there's only three speakers on there. I will come back to the public after that to see if there are any additional comments from the group, either virtually or in person. Also, note to council members, if you want to get any questions you may have, clarifying questions to staff as quickly as you reasonably can. It gives staff an opportunity to prepare some responses. At this point, once I go through the speakers list one time, I'm going to go to staff responding to clarifying questions at that point. So that's should be within about 15 minutes at most. Okay, so the first speaker I have is Jennifer Ingham, followed by Judith Brooke and Don Peters. So Jennifer Ingham is joining us here in person. Welcome. You have up to 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Little and members of the council and members of the public. My name is Jennifer Ingham. I'm the Vice President, University Relations at Capilano University, and I go by the pronouns she and her. Before I begin my remarks, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you on the unceded territories and traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh Nations, and it's an honor. For the last 50 years, Capilano University has grown from its modest beginnings as a small local community college, and today the university has over 100 programs, 8,700 more students, and it increases over the summer with students coming in and out, and over 1,200 employees, making us the second largest employer on the North Shore, and a vibrant contributor to the District of North Vancouver. Our faculty are leaders in fields such as motion picture arts, early childhood education, legal studies, and business administration. Our ambition is to add more programs, offerings, and increasing student headcount to develop more research and scholarly activities and opportunities for students and faculty that can benefit the community. We understand the pressures a growing student body can create on both the district and the bridge traffic. For this reason, more housing options close to campus are desperately needed. I'm here to speak to you today in support of the redevelopment proposal for 1310 Monashi Drive being led by Darwin Construction Limited. In 2017, Capilano University identified a lack of accessible and affordable housing for students as a significant impediment to student enrollment and retention. Darwin came alongside and supported CapU in leasing the Innovation Campus on the Dollarton Innovation Highway to achieve a housing solution, albeit off our campus, but for our students. However, with our leasing period at Dollarton ending soon, there's a limited time left to act without creating a larger housing gap in the community. Development plans for Maplewood area are in flux. Therefore, we know we can't count on current housing situation to be a long-term housing option for our students. And housing is really critical for our students and their well-being while they're studying at CapU. Our Dollarton Innovation Campus residence currently has 290 beds and a wait list of approximately 250 students at any given time. And that list seems to grow year after year. Therefore, we're seeking new housing solutions on and adjacent to our campus. We're currently going to add on campus 362 bed traditional dormitory, it's been a long day, dormitory style student housing complex. And it will be a landmark addition to our campus. And it will transform that end of the campus. And it's scheduled to open for students in September 2025. And we're appreciative to the council and the staff for helping us on that project. It's a positive step for the university, but we know it's not enough. In 2021, CapU did a scan of post-secondary institutions across BC and Alberta to develop housing targets and put CapU on par with comparable size colleges and universities to attract students. The study revealed that CapU should be offering housing options for at least 10% of the student body. This raises our target to about 1,000 beds to meet our student needs, comparable standards, and our growth projections. And that doesn't count our employees. This proposed development of market rental and affordable housing for some students builds on the positive working relationship we've established with Darwin in 2017. It increases the number of units for students and adds a variety to the housing options that will be available for those at CapU. With apartment-style housing, this project offers students a different style of housing and introduces an attractive option for staff, which will help with recruitment and retainment for housing, which is a premium on the North Shore. Additionally, we're excited about the commercial space and the amenities this development offers. On-site residents, on-campus residents, and commuter students will all stand to benefit as it will amplify that end of the campus. The commercial ventures will provide opportunities for students looking for part-time jobs near campus, and it means the students can live in and commute rather than commute to campus, where it's often a challenge for them to get there. Darwin's been a great partner. Their team has consulted with CapU since the conception of the project. And for the last 3 years, we've worked collaboratively to refine and create the offering before you now, and we're excited about the proposal we've reached today. We appreciate the work the district staff have done to find the balance of a project that offers dedicated and below market housing for our students and employees, and one that's viable for the developer. We appreciate the support and the attention the university has received from the mayor and council to advance the project to where we are today. So with these benefits in mind, we plan to urge you and council to approve this redevelopment plan. Creating more student housing is critical to both tackling the housing crisis we face in the district and ensuring CAPU students can feel part of the community.
Thank you very much, Jennifer Ingham. The next speaker I have is Judith Brooke, who is joining us virtually. Judith Brooke, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Mayor Little?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. My name is Judith Brooke, and I live in Lynn Valley, the district of North Vancouver. I'm thankful that this project is coming before council with the changes that have been made. 315 rental homes, with half of them reserved exclusively for CAPU, is really a good design and very much a necessity. And I believe I heard Mr. Zhang say completion slated for June 2027. So I'm glad to see there's an end point noted as well. And also we saw this is near to 362 other student housing spots. So this is a positive for all of those on campus, either as students or workers. I'd like to ask those involved to please consider embodied carbon and actively seek and implement low carbon alternatives. There are both construction carbon and operational carbon to consider. There's a COP, stands for coefficient of performance. So baseboards have a COP of 1, where 1 unit of electricity produces only 1 unit of heat. However, electric heat pumps have a COP of 3 or 4, where 1 unit of electricity results in 3 or 4 units of heat being brought inside the home, depending on how warm it is outside and or the model of the heat pump. From the point of view of affordability, which was an issue for council, heat pumps require only 1/3 or less of the power of baseboard heat. The May 16, 2022 report by Mr. Kevin Zhang on page 14 stated, heating will be provided by electric baseboard heaters in residential units and heat pumps for retail spaces. I suggest that the heat pump approach should be used in the residential as well. The district's climate-ready rezoning policy requiring cooling from August 2022 does not apply retroactively to this building. Very sadly, Metro Vancouver lost over 600 souls during the June 2021 heat dome, which brings me to tears. We heard of the design tonight to minimize solar heat, but surely we want to do the right thing here and provide AC via heat pumps in a substantial new build of over 300 residential units. Baseboard heaters are incredibly inefficient and heat pumps perform well. If possible, I'm asking if someone this evening could please respond to my earlier question. As we know, this project's been ongoing for some time. I had asked a while back whether utility costs are included in the rent. I am strongly advocating that instead of baseboards, Darwin will implement heat pump technology for residents, which also provides summer cooling. I recognize that there will be a mechanical engineer at a later stage. However, you need to plan, obviously, for the mechanical rooms that would be handling this, and it needs to be part of the overall design of this build. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for your comments, Judith Brooke. The next speaker I have is Don Peters. Don is joining us by phone today, and so I'll just remind him that to unmute is *6. Don Peters, can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can, Your Worship, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you, sir. Well, good evening, Your Worship and Council. And I actually just want to add this at the beginning here. I think that last speaker's ideas about heat pumps is a very solid one, and I would add my endorsement of that as well. My name is Don Peters. I live on West Queens in North Vancouver, and for the last 12 years have chaired an amazing group of people on the North Shore called the Community Housing Action Committee. Our primary mission here in the North Shore is to support and advocate for affordable housing improvement on the North Shore. And clearly this is a moment for us to endorse this staff report regarding this bylaw package of 3 bylaws at 1310 Monashi Drive. And while there is much in this application, Your Worship, to commend and to discuss, I am tonight addressing primarily long-term affordable housing in this development. Now, you don't need me to read back to you sections of the report, so I will not do that, but there are many that are very informative. We are pleased that the developer and the district have found a way to move forward by addressing their 6 concerns, clearly laid out in Mr. Zhang's staff report, but we particularly are pleased that items number 3 and 4 in that list of concerns, especially number 3 regarding income, have been settled. Your Worship, this issue of student housing is no less than a housing crisis within a housing crisis in this country, countrywide, and in this region. Now, as we make our way more solidly from online COVID learning to in-person, we run smack into, again, the issue of student housing. StatsCan reports that the number of international students has doubled since 2015 and now account for almost all of enrollment growth at Canadian universities. And we know that, and we see that, hear that, read that UBC is looking to increase student beds from 12,000, which at the moment, to 17,300 by 2030. So this is a critical issue for us all. We think the unit and the bed mix is outlined, secured is most appropriate, and note too that rents for this development remain unchanged, and that's good. Yeah, and here's the bonus too, a reduction in traffic to and from Capilano U. So in closing, we recommend that Darwin and the district, we commend both Darwin and the district for getting to yes, and we solidly urge council to push this to final public hearing as the staff report recommends. Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening to you all.
Thank you for your comments, Don Peters. The next speakers that I have are Catherine and Hazen. And so both of them joining us virtually today. So Catherine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is this
Okay.
Catherine Fagerland?
Yes, it is. Sorry that
Welcome.
I should probably alter that online name. Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's
Thank you
okay.
for allowing
Welcome.
me. Yeah.
You have
Sorry.
5 minutes to address the hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't take the full 5 minutes. I will submit this in writing, and further to your recommendation that we don't repeat what's already in writing, I'll just highlight a couple of my concerns. I mean, it's lovely to see rental housing being improved or being increased on the North Shore. This particular site I have quite a bit of familiarity with because my dog was boarded at Northwest Boarding Kennels for about 15 years. My daughter worked there for about 10 years. And I'm a bit concerned, even though I've read the environmental and geotechnical reports, I'm a bit concerned. I would encourage each one of you to go and walk around the bottom of that site. The far pen on the it looks like a brown patch on the overheads. That pen was closed several times, and my understanding is that it was closed because it was not stable. So engineers are engineers. I've worked with them for the last 35 years. They sign and seal things. I still have this inkling feeling that it's a bit iffy. I would have been happy, especially because if you look at the massing of the 6 stories, one of the 6-story, the southernmost 6-story tongue goes way out right onto the edge of that escarpment. I personally think it would have been better if the mousing was pulled back from that edge a little bit, but I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not a geotechnical person. This is just something that comes from my own feelings. There are several references to many of the reports for very specific stormwater management measures. Those are not mentioned anywhere in the bylaw, and the only thing that's in the bylaw is something about landscaping. Maybe that includes, well, it says the title is landscaping and stormwater management. Maybe that includes the actual clause doesn't say anything about stormwater management. I just think that needs to be emphasized because that's such a big portion, especially when you take a site and cover it with that much building and pavement. The other thing is that construction practices, all of us have seen what holes do to topography and to runoff. The construction practices will have to be very, very carefully monitored here, and significant measures to prevent any erosion, any further erosion on the site. That's not mentioned in the bylaw. I don't know if it should be, but I hope that somebody is taking good care of that. Then I come to my final comments, and those are to do with the housing agreement. The housing agreement, I note, is for only 10 years. It's not in perpetuity. I'm not quite sure why that term was chosen. What happens at the end of that term, affordability will likely still be an issue, especially if we get the kind of influx of citizens that we're forecast to get. There's a couple of other things about, and you'll see them when I submit my comments, allowing rental adjustments, et cetera. But the other thing that sort of I noticed specifically is the 14-day term for offering the units to CAPU students. You think about the school calendar, 14 days seems somewhat inadequate to me, especially when you think that it starts in September. It would be good, I think, if the offering was a month before September and allowed continuation for the month of September, because I don't know that, well, number one, 14 days offering, does that include the advertising period? It seems really, really short to me. And yeah, and then as somebody else mentioned, I would really, really strongly encourage Passive House, because Passive House doesn't just deal with sustainability and environmental friendliness. It also addresses durability, and that seems to me, when I look around at the housing stock that's being built right now, durability does not seem to be an inbuilt feature of it. Thank you very much, and I will send this to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comments, Catherine Fagerlund. Next speaker I have is also joining us virtually, Hazen. Hazen,
good
can you
evening,
hear
Mayor
me?
Little. How are you tonight?
Yes.
How is everyone tonight?
Hello,
Mayor Little,
welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. I actually wasn't going to address the hearing because I had submitted generally my comments in writing, but I am addressing it tonight based on some of the input that I have heard in support of this project from other people. And I'm addressing my comments now through the lens that I am unique here in the District of North Vancouver, because I have lived in 3 Canadian provinces: Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, and in 3 countries in the USMCA region, which is the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Across those very vast geographies, there are only 3 projects or 3 jurisdictions where I've ever seen a student housing commingled with market rental housing. And that's on the University of Ottawa campus in Ottawa, in what I would describe as a catastrophic project, which is now in front of the courts in so many ways I can't even list them. And at UBC, and here now we see it at Capilano University. Student housing is student housing, period. It's student rental housing. There's no such thing as, in my context that I have, in the lens that I've looked at this stuff, there's no such thing as market rental adjacent to or on a university campus. And the commentary by certain people that, oh, this is wonderful that, we're going to have 50% affordable housing. First of all, it's not affordable. It's not remotely affordable. But the suggestion that, oh, we're going to give them 50% of affordable housing units and the other 50% is going to be market, it's an absurdity. Okay. Again, I want to stress, I absolutely may be wrong here because I'm using the lens that I have. When you build housing on a university campus, that housing is not defined by the number of beds it provides. And I've heard a number of people, including Don Peters, say, well, there's these beds we're going to provide. The definition of beds applies to housing at a hospital, not on a university campus. Okay, let's make that clear. And I also see the definition of beds showing up in the staff report. I don't get that. Beds have nothing to do with housing for students. Beds are the way we define accommodations or spaces used in hospitals, not for student housing. So any form of student housing that includes, when it's adjacent to or on a university campus, any form that talks about market housing raises huge alarm flags for me. It just raises alarm flags. It looks to me like what this is. This looks like a proponent bringing forward a market housing project on lands in which it's expecting privileges because those lands are either on the campus or adjacent to the campus. Now, I'm going to carry it another step further. I happen to know a person who teaches, is a faculty member on that campus. I will take great exception to the allegations made in the letter written by I think it is either the president or the chancellor, in favor of the housing. I will assure you, faculty have not even been asked for their input with respect to this housing. They have not even been provided with any genuinely material information. So until we have two things happen, one is that the faculty and students, today's faculty and today's students of this university, until they are canvassed by an independent party who produce a report for the DNV, this project cannot go forward. I don't think that's a lot to ask. Okay. And secondly, this project cannot go forward until we know who has contributed to various councillors' election campaign in October. Thank you, Mayor Little and Council.
Thank you very much, Hayes and Colbert. Okay, I see no further speakers a first time at this moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a pause, check in with our staff, give them an opportunity to respond. I have seen a number of questions coming in. Oh, sorry, I do have another first-time speaker that's made themselves known. So I am going to try and grab that question also, just to give staff more time to be prepared for the responses. I see Corey Cost has joined the meeting virtually and raised your hand. And we're just moving Corey over to the meeting. Corey Cost, can you hear me? It appears as though you're muted on the system. Corey Cost, it shows you as muted.
Yes.
There we go.
I
Right.
think
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Corey Cost. I live near Edgemont Village at 2851 Colbert Drive. As a person not in the immediate area, I will restrict my comments to things that are maybe applicable to council and the residents of our district at large. I noticed that I didn't have access to the staff presentation material before the hearing. That's kind of difficult. I understand sometimes staff doesn't integrate that well into the material that's available, but it would have been nice. And I urge council to request that in the future, staff material presentation be included as part of the normal package. I do appreciate the timely construction of this facility. We've had many facilities approved in the past by council, which just have not been constructed in a timely manner. And I'm happy to see some time constraints on this. Being a novice scientist in risk assessment, I've always found that it's wise to look at the risks to the district at large. And consequently, when I noticed a little more details on the map on page 423, I see that there are risk contours just due to the topography of the area that certainly are, to me, quite unacceptable on a number of homes there. And that is in the range of 10 to the minus 4, 10 to the minus 5, where the standards for industries operating in the area, typically you want to stay below 10 to the minus 6. So we're 1 or 2 order of magnitudes more risk on some of these family homes that are down the escarpment there. It's unclear just what the full height differential is, but that map is certainly revealing. I've sent council 3 more maps that might illustrate in more detail the situation. And so my last comment is, I agree that a 14-day initial offering seems very short. And people could very well be on holidays and miss it. I hope that alternatively, there will be a notice out well before the 14-day initial offer is put into place. So people have somewhat become aware in case they're on holidays, especially in the summertime, that such a opportunity exists. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for your comments, Corey Koss. Okay, at this point, I see no further first-time speakers, so I'm going to take a moment and check back in with our staff. Staff, are you prepared to be responding, or would you like a brief break? Okay. So there have been a number of questions of clarifying nature presented by the councillors who have been observing the public hearing. So I'm going to ask the staff to read out the question and give their best response on the spot.
Yeah, Your Worship. Some of the questions are directed to the applicants, so I will just be generally going over the questions as they come in and provide answers as we go along. So the first question is about parking in the surrounding area. What happens to the surrounding area in terms of parking? There was a concern about some CAPU student may be using the surrounding area for parking. So I can, before I pass it on to the applicant's consultant, there is a traffic study, a parking study done, and the consultant has looked at the district TDM measure policies, traffic demand management policies, and I will just confirm that we've reviewed the proposal and confirmed that the proposal meets the district parking policy. With that, maybe I can ask the applicant's consultant to provide an answer about parking in the neighborhood.
Hello. The transportation consultant was unfortunately unable to join us this evening. I did review the transportation study before this meeting as well, and that study did emphasize that the The students and the staff and the faculty, who is the main demographic we expect to fill these units, will be within walking distance of the places where they work and where they go to school, and that the bus loop directly across the street from the project will reduce the requirement for vehicles, as will the car share that is currently provided on campus through EVO.
Thank you. May I just add to the question? I think the point of the question was to find out whether the district is going to need to do anything on our lands adjacent to the space in order to be able to mitigate overflow parking into neighborhoods around. So I think that's outside of the scope of the transportation consultant, but have our staff looked at the matter and seen whether there will be any overflow into the neighborhoods?
Let us look into that a little bit, take some time, look into that and consult with engineering staff and then get back to you. Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you very much. Next question.
Okay, so the next couple of questions all about, both about the geotechnical report. There is a more of a general question about the safety, and given that there are some there is a mention about, there is a slide that was reported occurred in 2007 near the site. So wanted to hear from the geotechnical expert regarding the safety of the site, given the potential slight risk. And then the next question about the geotechnical report is quite specific. It talked about the report stated that there are 6 holes, test holes drilled, but only 4 were used to test ground conditions, and seeking a clarification, explanation of why that is the case. And also, the report goes on to state no civil joints were included at the time of the testing. So commentary is referred to as expected. And we're quoting the report based on the anticipated foundation elevations and observed ground conditions. We expect that the buildings can be supported on conventional spread. Is this a reasonable certainty on the escarpment that has failed twice in the immediate and surrounding areas? So I will pass it on to the applicant geotechnical consultant, please.
Our consultant from GeoPacific should be in the virtual queue.
Okay,
Matt
we may have to
Kogan.
move them over as a panelist. Do you have a name?
His name is Matt Kokan.
Matt. I don't see a Matt on the list. Is that already a panelist? I don't see a name that matches that on the virtual participants list.
Maybe we can come back to that question.
Which, sorry?
Maybe we can come back to the question
Uh,
and I'll see if we can get him on.
Yes, we can certainly go on to another question and come back to that. Yes?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
do
Zhang,
that.
back
Yeah,
to you.
absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. The next few questions about the rental rates. What are the rates for the CAPU housing? Will it be significantly less? And I can confirm that the rental rates for the CAPU guaranteed units, there are 50% of the 315 units are guaranteed CAPU. And of this, 32 are below market rental rates. And so the rental rates are actually included in the council package. So if this is the initial report, and they are they're pegged at the I believe at Metro Vancouver median rents, and so that just for that 33 units for the studio is about 1348, and for the 1-bedroom is about $1,650 per month, and 2-bedroom is $2,104. And then for the 3-bedroom is significantly lower than the Metro Van median, which DMV median, which is at $2,125 for 3-bedroom units. And asking further question about the non-market rental, guaranteed to be non-market in perpetuity, and please confirm that this unit will never be converted to market rental. So the rental rates for this non-market rental units that I just quoted for rents, they are secured through the housing agreement in perpetuity. And a question about environmental standard. I will give the applicant a heads up. So the question is about the building is being built to the environmental standard of the district, and why heat pump is not included in design. And then is it possible that at this point that design be modified to incorporate heat pumps? So I will pass that on to the applicant, noting that from a policy perspective, the project as designed does meet the district environmental and sustainability policies of the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, the question about what does the non-market rental actually mean? What is the percentage of the
Can we
below
just have
market?
the response on the question of the source of heat then? So then it's, at this point, it is baseboard heating, it is not heat pump. Is there a cooling aspect to the capability of the building?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to council and the public. We are very early in the design development of this project, and by no means have we committed to a specific source for heating or cooling. The summers of the past few years since this project has been developed has highlighted the need for cooling in all buildings going into the future, and we will be reviewing the details of the heating once we confirm our consultant on this project.
Okay, specifically, what are you looking for in the clarifying questions?
I don't know. Yeah, I think you can hear me. Are you saying that you will consider heat pumps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very efficient source of heating and cooling.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to the level of detail where we would define whether it's baseboard heating. There was something put in the design development, but that's from 2019.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten to the detail where we would specify exactly what we would put in the buildings. Heat pumps will be considered.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
We have the consultant now online on the virtual, so I don't know, are they over as a panelist now at this point?
Through the chair, we do just need the consultant to accept being moved to panelist. We're just trying to upgrade him to the panelist.
Okay, so I can now see Matthew Kokan on there. Perhaps Yan Zhang, may I press you to restate the question that the engineering consultant is going to be responding to?
The question is about the geotechnical reports. The first one is a general commentary about the risk of developing on the site, given that there was some slight risks and some history on the site nearby. The second one is about, quite specifically, is about why only 4 testing holes were used to test the ground conditions instead of the 6. And then also, there is a specific statement in the report saying that based on the anticipated foundation elevations and observed ground conditions, we expect that the buildings can be supported on conventional spread. So the question is this a reasonable certainty on the escarpment that has failed twice in the immediate and surrounding area?
Okay, and Matthew Kokan, can you hear me?
I can.
And do you have a response?
Well, there's a number of questions, and so I will try and address them from memory. And if I forget to address one of them, I apologize. Maybe the question could be asked once again. So the first question that I recall was, why did we do 6 holes? Sorry, why did we do 4 holes and not 6? I don't know where the 6 came from. I mean, we do as many holes as we think are appropriate given the variability of soils in the area. If the soils are relatively uniform, as is the case in this particular site, we would do an appropriate number of holes just to confirm ground conditions at foundation elevation. And sometimes there's constraints on where you can get it in. That wasn't the case in this particular project because we had a pretty clear site, but there's a number of factors that go into selecting the number of test holes, and it comes down to professional judgment. Sometimes you modify the scope during the course of the investigation because the investigation reveals things you weren't expecting. But in this case, it was fairly consistent with what we'd seen. As far as again, I've got 30 years experience doing this, and I don't understand where the question came from, but hopefully that addresses that. In terms of instability, there's lots of instability in steep slopes. Now there are slopes that are relatively steep adjacent to the property, but certainly they're not what we would consider proximal or nearby. So I'm aware of the escarpments and some of the problems that have happened in the past 10, 20 years. And they're visible on Google on different mapping programs, but they're far enough away where they're not considered relevant to the subject property. So it kind of wandered a little bit there. Was there anything else that was in that group of questions that I missed?
We're gonna keep you online, Matthew, as a panelist, and if we have further questions for you, we'll engage you again. But at this point, I'm gonna go back to staff. Yan Zhang, further questions?
Yes, the next question is about the long-term affordability. I'm going to ask Kevin Zhang to actually answer that question. So the commentary is that with rent control, currently the rent will, it was understood that rent will become more affordable over time. However, when students move out, can we please confirm that the rent for the new tenants is reset against the prevailing market rent at the time that the new tenants move in? So I think it's better explained in the slide. So I'm going to pass it on to Kevin.
Thank you. Through your worship, I guess the question can be answered in two parts. The first is, does the rent relate to specific tenancies, whether they end, the new one starts? So the answer to that for the non-market units is no. The rent is set at the time, at the rates that was previously mentioned by Ms. Zen. And they will be set at the time that the housing agreement is signed by both parties. And that rate for the 4 types of units will increase as per stipulated in the housing agreement. And that increase, that allowable annual increase, is determined to be the lesser of 3 numbers. And the first number is the average 12-month CPI for the previous calendar year, so generally inflation. The second is the maximum increase amount allowed by the Residential Tenancy Act. And the third is the increase in market. So it's the lesser of those 3 numbers. Whichever one is lower, that's what governs the allowable rent increase for that year. And we did include market in there just in the case that market rents go down. We don't want these units to become more pricey. Okay, that answers that question, hopefully.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question.
The next question is directed at the applicant. So please provide more detail on how that 14-day lease-up period actually work.
Thank you. The 14-day priority access period will happen when a current tenant gives notice that they'll be leaving the unit. At that point of time, the operator, so us, will be required to reach out to the pre-existing housing wait list of folks who are already applied and approved to live in the housing unit. During the first 14 days, the operator cannot rent out to the general market for those market units. And priority will be given to any CAPU folks who want to apply. In addition, at the time of the occupancy permit, there is an exclusive leasing period that is a priority access period for a minimum of 4 months. However, the priority access will exist in perpetuity on the building.
Thanks for that. Is 2-bedroom the largest unit here? So 3-bedroom is the largest unit in the development. The next question is the CAPU guarantee units. Is that for student first and then faculty and staff? So my understanding is that they're being treated equally. So CAPU individual are being treated equally, but the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct.
Again, going back to the overall market unit, the occupancy is targeted for June 2027. So the question is that the proposed rents currently included in the reports are estimated based on the current condition. What will rent be set in 2027? So the answer is very similar to what Kevin Zhang given on the non-market units. So the annual allowable adjustment is the same for the market rental units, and from the period of the bylaw adoption to the final occupancy permit is subject to the rental increase in terms and condition outlined in the housing agreement.
Sorry, just to clarify the question, was the question about if the rent is specifically related to non-market units or the market rental units?
I believe the question is about general, the proposed rents, the question about proposed rents, market.
I don't know. I haven't seen who asked the question specifically. Yan, do you have the question?
Yeah, so I'm basically saying this verbatim. Occupancy is targeted, this is from Councillor Ma. Occupancy is targeted in June 2027. I appreciate that the proposed rents are estimates based upon current conditions. How will rents be set in 2027?
Right, so just to answer that, the non-market rents are set at the time of the housing agreement signatures and escalate, but the market rents do not follow that formula. They just follow market rates. So I'll let the applicant add to that if need be.
That is correct. It's worth noting that because 50% of the units have to be filled by Capilano students, faculty, or staff, there will be some forces that mean we have to provide the units at costs that they can afford. Otherwise, the units will remain empty. But it will be whatever the market currently is.
Okay, thank you.
So the last question I have from this batch is that will students who move out in summer or during gap go to the bottom of the rental list when they return? So if I may have the applicant answer that question, that'd be great.
Subletting is actually protected in the housing agreement, specifically because we expected students might go away for the summer.
So but it's the responsibility of them to do the subletting themselves if they want to get some revenue during the summer months.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. I would always encourage council to be sending the questions back through the email system just so that staff can track them all. I've seen 2 questions come through the chat online. Yan Zhang, can you see those? And have they been addressed? I think one of them I think clearly hasn't been addressed. The question is to Mr. Kokan, the engineer, asking whether they've considered or aware of the slide in 2007 and its proximity, because it is quite close, and so wondering if they considered that in their assessment of the property. Mr. Kokan, can you hear me?
I can. And so, yes, we did consider it, that and other slides.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And the other questions I see there, Now that's related to just the volume of the sound. And I think the question from Councillor Hanson in the chat has been addressed. Yes, okay. Councillor Muir, I see your hand is still raised. I think, did Mr. Cocan address the question you had?
Not exactly. The question in regards to the test holes for the ground conditions was on page 2 of GeoPacific's report submitted to the binder. And
So
it
I
spoke,
think Mr. Cocan's response to that was they were satisfied that 4 test holes was sufficient to determine the consistency of the ground for the site. And they were satisfied that they didn't need to do additional test holes.
actually, Mayor Little, if I could just finish. They actually in the first paragraph refer to 6 test holes. Not sure why the speaker doesn't know what I'm talking about, but it refers in the first paragraph to 6 stem auger holes were completed at the site, but 4 were tested. And my question was, why were 6 drilled and only 4 were tested? I'm
Okay,
just
Mr.
curious.
Cocan, do you have a response to that?
Are you referring to the DCPT soundings when you mean tested?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, again, DCPT, that's a consistency parameter, gives us strength information. And so it's just supplemental information. So we don't do it for every single test.
Okay, it was the 3rd bullet in your report, so I thought it was kind of significant. You also, Mayor Little, I don't think my second question was answered either in regards, and Councillor Hanson's question, was the previous slide considered? I think the gentleman said that the areas of the slide were nowhere near this site. It was actually right directly below the site where the slide occurred, at the end of Seymour Boulevard. And I know that because I lived in that neighborhood when it happened and it nearly missed a house. And then the other one was further up the Seymour at Twin Bridges. So 2 slides in 10 years.
Again, Councillor, that question was asked and answered though, which said yes, that the one was considered in the slide from 2007 was considered.
Okay, but what does that mean? It was considered and what? It was just ruled obsolete. There doesn't seem to be any information in regards to the concern of that slide and what caused it.
Okay, I'll go to the engineer and see if we get any other clarifying remarks on that. Again, Mr. Cocan.
Yeah, so there's different reasons why slides happen in these watersheds. In this case, Seymour Rivers, there's steep slopes on both sides. Sometimes these things are triggered by surface water releases that were kind of unintended, if you will. And sometimes they're triggered, in other words, they start from the top and they move downwards. And sometimes they are triggered by erosional events at the bottom of the hill or the bottom of the ravine, if you will. In other words, the river is moving into the slope and causing oversteeping at the bottom. And so the latter type of issue is more serious because it will over steepen the slope and it could result in a larger failure that could impact further back. In this case, this was something that was initiated near the surface. So not near the surface, near the top of the embankment. And it was surface water initiated. And when I say it's nowhere near, it's all relative. It's like geologic time. A young rock is 25,000 years old, or 25 million years old, whereas an old rock is 800 million years old. So what I mean, it's not close. It's not within 30 to 50 meters of the site. Just to clarify the councillor's questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mayor Little, I think could you just give me direction on when we can ask for additional information from staff?
Yes, if you send an email back through to staff with any additional questions you may have, and that goes for all members of council. These are the agreed upon rules of the public hearing, that we will send our questions through to staff in a written form. So I would encourage all members of council to again send your emails through in written form so staff have the opportunity to respond properly. What I will do is there will be an opportunity again, as I'm going to go through and see if there are second or third time speakers. And then there will be questions, another opportunity to go back to staff for additional clarifying questions. Councillor Forbes, your hand is still up. You have a process question?
Only part of I had 2 or 3 questions and only 2 have been answered, and I've typed them all in and they've been skipped over. So
Okay, what's the third part that's missing?
the third question was the below market, where is it? What does non-market rents actually mean? Is there a specific percentage below market? And is that percentage in perpetuity?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll have Yan Zhang respond to that.
Yeah, we're happy to provide that answer in more detail. Maybe I'll let Kevin Zhang take that question. Can you share this? Can you share this slide?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Through your worship, I guess the two parts to that question is what are the non-market rents? So as we mentioned before, the market rents are, the non-market rents are listed in the report. So for studio is 1348, 1 bed is 1650, 2 bed is 2104, and 3 bed is 2125. And the follow-up question was, is it protected in perpetuity? And
just to be clear, the first question was how are those determined, not what they are, but how are those determined?
Oh, sorry. So they were determined, well, they're proposed by the applicant, and our policies recommend that they be at or below the DMV median. So which is why they have come back with at DMV median for studio to 2 bed and below DMV median for the 3 bed. Are they protected in perpetuity? Yes, they are protected in perpetuity with the escalation clause, as we mentioned before in the housing agreement. And the other question was, how do they compare to market? That's more of a difficult question to answer because it depends on what the market rates are in the future. So we would have to kind of do a calculation for each scenario in the future. So it's difficult to answer at this point.
I'll further add to that, just in terms of providing a response, the percentage below the DMV median, that's also included in that chart. So basically for studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom is exactly at DMV median rates. And then for a 3 bedroom is a 14% discount, 3 bedroom, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Forbes, does that address your question?
I think so, but just to put it simple for the public as well who's listening, is there an actual percentage below the market that we are aiming for? Is it the medium number, and can you quote that as a percentage? And then is that percentage, that difference between market and whatever the non-market percentages, is that difference going to be in perpetuity, or are we eventually?
I think I understand the question, Councillor Forbes.
Yeah.
So the question is that when the unit is vacated and the unit is refilled, will the rate be adjusted or the rate stay at median, or will the rate be the capped rate of growth from the original charted arc that you would have?
Your worship, I think it may be a good idea to show the slide of the rental rate comparison for those non-market rental rates as well as the market rental rates. And so maybe just give us a little bit more time and we can get that going.
I think in Mr. Zhang's presentation, you specifically said that the non-market units would effectively follow their own path, regardless of whether they were repopulated with new occupants or tenants, that the path was prescribed by the policy with those the lowest of 3 portions. So whether it's continuously occupied or whether it's short-term occupied, the rate would be determined by the policy. I believe that was in your presentation.
Yes, through your worship, that's correct. So even if a unit changed over 10 times a year, the rental rate would not be no different. It would follow that curve.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, does that address your concern? Thank you very much. Okay, any additional questions at this time? Councillor Pope, did you send one through?
Yes, I sent several through, and it was mentioned in the beginning that my questions would be addressed by the applicant when staff gave their report, but it hasn't been formally asked here. So shall I?
This is, can the applicant please respond to the question of ensuring all units will have a locals first policy? If not, why not? They did respond to that at the front end of the presentation. And pet-friendly rental policy, they responded to that. They said that currently the district does not, sorry, Yan Zhang responded to that saying currently the district does not have the ability to regulate those two items.
Right, and she also said the applicant would respond to this.
Okay. The applicant have any additional information on your own housing policies there?
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to the locals first policy, we would be extremely concerned about the legalities of such a program. I don't know how to determine what local is, and I would be concerned about the perceived discrimination against international students.
Theoretically, someone who is studying locally would be considered a local anyway.
Of course, so there will be a natural locals first in that you have to go to CAPU to get any of these 50% of the units, but defining beyond that, I don't think we're in a position to do.
I think you are in a position to accommodate that. It's been part of many types of housing contracts in this province and across the country. And I wonder how we move that forward.
So I want to be very clear, we are not to be argumentative with the applicant in any way, shape, or form during a public hearing. So just want to be clear about that. Question of a clarifying nature, your response has been that you do not have the ability to do that, and staff have affirmed that we do not have the legal ability to enforce that on that space. I think that adequately addresses it. What about pets policy?
Darwin Properties does build pet-friendly buildings. Maplewood Village will have such a pet-friendly building. At this time, it's hard to confirm because I'm not sure how that would interact with the student dormitory piece. However, at the point where we would be confirming operational logistics, we will absolutely consider whether this can be a pet-friendly building or not, or if one of the buildings can be a pet-friendly building.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm up to date with the questions so far, but there will be a further opportunity for council questions. And so at this point, I do see a virtual attendee who has their virtual hand raised, Mr. Colbert. And so I'm putting the option out there. Would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first or second time? The first speaker on that list will be Mr. Colbert, as he's indicated virtually. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? We need to make sure that the attendees are moved over to the panel as quickly as possible. Is anyone else wishing to speak a first or second time as well, just so I can take hands? Yeah, I see a hand back there, so we'll be next after that. And I have Dr. Cost also wishing to be a second time speaker. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? I see him over now. There you go. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? Unfortunately, sometimes
Mike,
takes a
can you hear
moment to
me?
move people. Yes, I can. Welcome.
Yeah,
You
so
have-
I just want to say it took a bit of time for me to be moved over as a panelist. And then when I also had to unmute myself.
That's okay. We're in a
So
rush,
you
so
can- yeah,
we've
so-
got you now. I can hear you. Welcome. You
Yeah.
have 5 more minutes to address the hearing.
Yeah, I'm not going to use all 5 minutes. What I want to say is I put this in my written submissions, but it really needs to be stressed. Again, you know the context, and I won't repeat it. You know the context that I look at, the lens that I look through this. And I look through this lens because of some very specific details, which I'm not going to get into right now. There is a big issue of what is the definition of a student? And I want to stress this. What is the definition of a student it completely differs. For those that do not know this, the definition of a student differs across this country. So the definition of a student in Ontario versus Quebec versus BC is actually different. And the Canada Revenue Agency has a big issue with respect to people that pull money out of RSP funds to actually attend university on a part-time basis as part of long-term or adult learning. There is actually a complicated issue with respect to what is the definition of a student. And that definition of a student is not included in the application. And I have to tell you, if you don't include a very explicit definition of a student, you get a big problem here. And what is the definition of a student will not just be a big problem here in BC. It won't just be a big problem with this application. Okay, it's going to be a big problem as it relates to the Canada Revenue Agency definition of a student. So as I look at this application, I do not see the very detailed particulars, which I know from my tax work must be included. So there has to be very detailed particulars. Is a student a person who takes 2 courses per 4-month term over 12 months, or is it a person that takes 2 courses in 4 months times 2 terms, which is 4 courses in 8 months, or is the definition of a student someone who is taking at the minimum of 3 courses in a 4-month term times 2 4-month terms equals 6 courses. This is really, really important. This is going to go right to the core of the housing agreement, but it's going to go beyond the housing agreement, Council. It's going to go to the core of the definition of a student with respect to the CRA definition of a student. This does not exist in the housing agreement. Right? It's not there. It has to be there. If it's not there in the housing agreement, there are going to be an untold number of complications. Now, there are some of you on council who are well educated in this matter, and I think Councillor Hanson probably is one of those people because he's been a student at a number of places, both in Canada and overseas. So he's a very intelligent person to look to for guidance on this, okay? And it's not just him. There are other people. There are other very well experienced people. You got to get this right, okay? In the housing agreement, council and mayor, this is a big, big issue because I deal with this issue. I deal with this issue in my own tax work. And I got to tell you, it is a complicated issue. And it's just going to be more complicated based on the housing agreement that's been presented here, okay? You're going to have to get this right. I'm rambling here, and I'm only rambling because you know how many years I've dealt with this issue? Since 2012. It's 11 years. Thanks, Council, for hearing that little bit of information I had.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. I think it's already flagged a question. There you go. So the next speaker I have is Corey Cost for a second time.
Good evening, Your Worship. Corey Cost here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. Okay, just some short comments. Certainly, let's not confuse below market with affordable housing at all. I think you need to be able to compare also with what other institutions like CAPU are charging for student housing, be it new or not new. Finally, I'm well aware of how to do searches, so I refer council to page 496 of the council package that discusses ad nauseum about the holes. There are in fact 7. So, but not all are used. So that detail may assist council in understanding what's going on there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Corey Cost. Just want to be clear about what's being referred to. I heard Dr. Cost mention page 496. My package doesn't go up to 400 pages. So you're talking about the full public input binder then? Is that what Dr. Cost was referring to?
That's what I was referring to as well at the beginning of the meeting, Mayor Little.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that what's being referred to is the full public binder, correct? Okay.
If you want to be clear, it's from the package that was sent and posted on the website.
Yeah, so that's the one that's at dnv.org/agenda, which includes all of the public input as well. That's been received up to this point. The main package that council saw coming in, the main report, is 133 pages, but I believe what you're referring to is incorporated in there. If not, it's in the public submission package. Okay, and just checking the room, I believe we had someone here who wanted to speak, so come on down to the microphones here. If you could start with your name, that would be appreciated.
My name is Jeff Hogerborst.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
So I'm a local resident in the area and even walked my dog through the campus last night. Firstly, let me say I'm unsure if I'm for or against this project, but I just made a bunch of notes while listening to different people speak and wanted to share my thoughts on them. I think one of the big selling points is being student housing and the need for that. And I think it seems to me like there is the need for it there, but I'm curious why CapU isn't developing the land for themselves and making it 100% student housing if that's really the need that we're trying to solve. Separately, I'm curious how the proposed height of this building compares to how many other buildings in the Capilano University are of the same height. I'm not sure what that is and if that analysis is being done. And also how many other buildings are of that height in the Linmore area, Linmore North area. Also, it was mentioned how how this project might solve traffic congestion or remove traffic from the area. Now, this didn't quite make sense to me. I think the students housing there are probably people today who are more likely to use public transportation to go to and from there. And if they take the public transportation or not, it's not removing those wheels from the road. However, the 158 units that are for everybody else, they're more likely to be the car users and need to get in and out of that area. And I see this only actually adding traffic up and down that roadway. And then finally, I'm curious, really during a lot of the talks, I just wanted to keep like raising my hand and asking questions, but I'm curious how this aligns with the previous development plan of the Linmore North area. And I'm wondering if this is just going to lead to further development of other land in this area.
I'm going to give you a very unsatisfactory response. It's a public hearing, so we get to hear the concerns from the community. But what we can do is make sure that you can connect with staff, and staff will do their best to address the concerns and questions that you've had.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, and those are all my thoughts. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. And if you want to connect with staff and leave your email address with them, they'll do their best to respond to you for that. Okay, would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first or second time? Okay, and I'm going to do something here I need to check back in with staff. Questions? Are there additional questions that you've received that you have a response to?
Yes, Your Worship, there are additional questions we received, but I think we need a little bit more time to compile the responses.
So and in that situation, because we are facing the closure of the hearing, I need to ask the questions. I need to find out what the questions are and get them on the record. And then we will have to determine whether it is something that we need to hold the hearing open for, or whether it's something that is not essential to make our next decision and therefore something that we can just hear at a later date. And so I need to hear the questions.
Yes, Your Worship. So I have 4 questions here. First is about the ground conditions. Then the ground conditions in the report were considered in April and May 2020. And when the the question is about as groundwater saturation becomes increased with more rainfall, would there be a instability question? So we wanted to have a little bit more time look into that. And then the second question is the housing agreement is secured in perpetuity, and then there is a 10-year agreement for the term as the term for the phase development agreement, and how do they relate? And this one is actually a simple question to answer. And then the next question is definition of a student, staff, or faculty in the housing agreement. And then the last question is what is the rental rate comparison between the CAPU student housing and the Darwin proposed housing?
Can you address the one that's easy to address, the development application or the development 10-year agreement versus the in perpetuity, please?
Yeah. So the housing agreement is secured in perpetuity. And then the 10-year is basically the phase development runs a term of 10 years. And then the purpose of that 10-year is to secure the delivery of the housing at in 2027. So they're not related.
Why is it, may I ask, why is it a 10-year agreement if the building is going to be completed in 2027?
Yeah, so we basically allow the term to be what's permitted under the LGA. Maximum 10-year, and yeah, if the development is, this is allow a little bit more flexibility of in terms of delay, in terms of permitting delay. But that's my understanding. Maybe Mr. Zhang, you have more additional info.
Yes, through your worship, it just allows the opportunity for extensions if agreed to by both parties, but that is the maximum allowed under the LGA.
Okay, so now I need to check into the clerk. So we have 3 additional questions that have been asked. Obviously, we're not an engineering technical body. Some of the questions are technical in nature. I can't imagine those would be required for us to maintain the hearing be continued.
Through the chair, it would depend on, as it relates to the bylaw being considered. So what's being considered is the OCP amendment and a rezoning amendment and the phase development. Ground study may or may not be considered relevant to the bylaws being considered for this public hearing. As it relates to some of the other questions, as they've been entered into the record, staff are able to provide responses within the second and third reading report, answering some of the questions that do relate to the rezoning OCP bylaw as well as the phase development agreement.
So just want to be clear. So since the questions were read into the record, the answers are able to be provided in advance of second and third. How does that affect members of the public who would love to have that information before they finalize their comments? Their opportunity is still closed at the end of this meeting?
That's correct. The opportunity for public to provide correspondence, written submission, and verbal submission is at the public hearing. Following the conclusion of the public hearing, council may not receive any new additional information or input from the public on this matter.
Yeah. And I'll restate that at the close as well. Okay, so are there any additional questions that you've received?
There's one. Yeah, no, there's no additional question, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and so as this is a quasi-judicial setting, I have to officially exhaust the public speaking list. So I'm going to ask this 3 times. First, is there anybody else who would like to address the hearing for a first, second, or third time? I see a virtual hand has come up. Dr. Cost, you would like to address the hearing for a third time. Can we move Dr. Cost over as a panelist? I don't think he'll be able to hear me until he is. Can we just move all
Yes,
these
Your Worship,
attendees
I hate
over?
to speak again, but sometimes you miss the obvious. And so since I missed it, it may be that council also missed it. Being modest, of course. As you know, we're in a period of climate change. And one of the things we've been told by the district itself that we can expect more intense rainstorms. The intensity could be quite a bit more severe than any storms of the past. And so you should be aware that slides in this area are more likely to take place than they would have been forecast to take place 10 or 20 years ago. I think it's an important factor, and that very special care should be taken to ensure that the excessive ground waters don't get into this area and cause a slide to the homes below. That's my final, hopefully final comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cost. Okay, again, sort of entering the process for exhausting the public speaking. So is for a first, second, or third time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a second time, would anybody like to address the hearing for a first, second, or third time? And for a third and final time, would anybody like to address the hearing for a first, second, or third time? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I believe we've exhausted the public input. Mr. Zhang, you had a comment?
Yes, through your worship, we just have one other answer to one of the questions that was asked by council is what is the comparison of the prices between CapU housing and Darwin housing? So I think this may refer to both the existing CapU student housing at Darlington or the upcoming CapU student housing at the north parking lot. So with regard to the existing housing at the Darlington site, the prices are between $4,700 per term, and that's broken down to $2,400 for the accommodation and $2,300 for the meal plan. And it's a bit more expensive. If you don't want to share. So for a single occupancy is $5,500, and that's broken down into $3,200 for the accommodation and $2,300 for the meal plan. And with regard to the upcoming student housing project, they recently submitted their building permit application. So I would estimate that's at least 3 years away from completion. So in my recent conversation with CapU is they do not yet have the final housing rates for those student housing units. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, do you have a referral motion or did you have a question?
Well, I just have a question about the process. So Ms. Lenz commented that the question in regards to the ground conditions and further information from our engineers in regards to water saturation, groundwater saturation, et cetera, would not, we could still talk about that.
Through staff will receive any additional information and they will provide a response to the question that's specifically asked. No, the council cannot speak to other members of the public or the engineer at this time. We'll receive a response from staff to that question.
Okay, well then I'm going to move that this hearing remain open in order to be able to receive that information and be able to discuss it in an open forum.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, hold on just a moment. Mr. Milburn, do you have an additional response?
Your worship, just wanted to know that we do have the geotechnical engineer still on the line, I believe, and he should be able to comment on items within his report that are already in the public domain. And we would be happy to answer those types of questions tonight if that's your direction, your worship.
That's not actually what I was asking. I did read the report from the geotechnical engineer, and I'm concerned about, our own experience in the district in regards to slides. I think this is a significantly sensitive area, and I think we need to be really clear and understand the implications behind building on an escarpment, and what those, potential challenges may be. And I think we need to talk about that.
I second Councillor Mears' motion.
I want to be clear because I was trying to get direction at the time. What's the motion that's been proposed?
That we keep the public hearing open. We adjourn.
Sorry.
So
Okay,
can
hold on
hear-
just a moment. I'm just conferring with the clerk. Can I have everybody mute their microphones for a second, please?
We can keep it open. We have to state the date and time it'll reconvene. The next available date we could reconvene is on February 28th. This isn't related to the bylaws, it's more of a conceptual question.
This shouldn't hold up the hearing process.
Staff can report back on ground conditions generally in the area, but it's not related specifically to these.
Yeah, so I'm having a difficult time with this particular motion because the question is whether or not we're going to hold the hearing open to receive an answer to a question that is not bearing on rezoning an OCP amendment. The question is whether or not an engineer will sign off in future on a building as being safe to build on the site. And that is not within the technical purview of the council specifically. And so I don't see why it would be bearing on us to hold the hearing open for those purposes when staff can already address that in advance of second and third reading. And it would already be an absolute legal requirement before the building permit could be issued on the site to establish that the building could be built safely and within the geotechnical codes of the province. And so I don't see it as being a purpose to hold the public hearing open, even though I do absolutely hear your concerns and comments, Councillor Murray. We obviously have a community that's very sensitive to debris flow issues in our community and slope stability. But it is something that is going to have to be legally satisfied in the process anyway. So I'm gonna recommend that the motion that we consider is a referral motion back to a regular meeting of council, that the matter be then closed, and then we would pick up the item at second and third with the additional comments permitted by the staff. And so I'll make that motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Back. I'm going to have the clerk read that into the record.
Thank you. Through the chair, that the January 31st, 2023 public hearing is closed and that District of North Vancouver Official Community Plan 7900-2011 Amendment Bylaw 8561-2022 Amendment 47 is returned to council for further consideration, and that District of North Vancouver Rezoning Bylaw 1416 Bylaw 8562 is returned to council for further consideration, and that Phase Development Agreement Bylaw 8606-2022 1310 Monashee Drive is returned to council for further consideration.
Okay, that's the motion. The motion's on the floor. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded?
I'm opposed.
Motion carries with Councillors Murray and Hanson opposed. Okay, thank you very much. And so what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the hearing is now closed. The council cannot receive further submissions from the community. The staff can respond to some of the questions that have been asked up until this point as a part of the hearing process. But officially, the closed period goes right through to adoption. But what's going to happen is at second and third reading, this is going to come back to a public meeting of council. And I'll check in with the clerk. I believe we have it slated for February 27th. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so our intent is to have that on the February 27th regular meeting of council. And so you have to watch the agendas in that week just to make sure it didn't slip for some reason, but it should be on February 27th. And so we'll reconvene at that time where council will be able to give their final deliberations and decide whether to advance this at second and third reading. Thank you all very much for coming out and participating. Thank you to the staff for preparing all the reports considered tonight. Have yourselves a great evening.
Good night.